Bridget and Marisol didn't have a good impression of Rosalind. Her shoulder-length hair was tied into a bun, she didn't wear any makeup, and she didn't look very friendly. Rosalind was one of the 4 great generals, and she'd experienced hundreds of battles on the battlefield. She'd gone through countless bloody and fiery trials. The enemies even called her Rakshasha. Rosalind was dressed casually today, and she looked put together enough for the informal occasion. She was attractive without makeup, but Stephen, Dennis, Zachary, and Jaden knew that if she dressed up, she'd be 1,000 times more beautiful than Bridget or Marisol. Many years ago, Rosalind had taken on a mission to infiltrate enemy territory. She'd put on makeup and dressed extravagantly. Everyone was amazed by her beauty, including Stephen, Dennis, Zachary, and Jaden. "Yes, she's one of the bridesmaids," Stephen replied. "The best man couldn't make it today." "She looks like a tomboy," Marisol mocked. "Kim, are you fine with this?" Bridget pointed at Jasmine. "She looks okay, but we can't accept Rosalind. Kim, I thought your ex-husband would at least choose someone decently beautiful as your bridesmaid. Is this all he's capable of? Do you really think she deserves to stand with us at the wedding?" A loud bang echoed in the restaurant, startling Bridget and Marisol. Rosalind had picked up a knife and fork and stabbed their table with lightning speed. "Do you think I'm invisible or something? I'm standing right here, and I've heard enough." Rosalind easily pulled out the knife and fork that were halfway embedded in the table and expertly spun them in her hand. Bridget and Marisol's gaze followed the utensil's movements. They suddenly felt threatened, as if they were in danger of having their necks sliced open. The hair on their necks stood on end. Rosalind specialized in hacking. She could crack all the major bank systems in the world within 30 seconds. But she was just as formidable on the battlefield. Few opponents could get close to her before they would meet their end. Not to mention, she'd never been one to tolerate slander. "I'll give you one more chance. Think before you speak and choose your words wisely." Bridget cleared her throat. In a shaky voice, she said, "Miss Rosalind, we think you definitely suit the bridesmaid role. We're the ones who can't compare to you." Marisol was scared to fall behind. "We're very satisfied with you, Miss Rosalind." Rosalind gave them an unimpressed look. "Is that so? Could have said that from the start. Then I wouldn't have had to damage the table." Bridget and Marisol lowered their gaze, too afraid to make eye contact. Stephen could tell that even though they complained about everything, they were actually fence-sitters who bullied the weak and feared the strong. After Rosalind's warning, Bridget and Marisol became timid. They stopped trying to provoke her and gave her a small smile to smooth things over. They decided that it would be best to turn their attention elsewhere. Their gazes shifted back to the groomsmen, Dennis, Zachary, and Jaden. When they first saw them, they didn't think too much of them because Rosalind had caught their attention. On closer inspection, the groomsmen were tall and attractive, but their style was too ordinary for their taste. Their hair was short, and their clothes were casual. Not to mention, the 3 of them had a dangerous glint in their eyes, and there was a kind of unnerving aura around them that set them apart from everyone else. Needless to say, Bridget and Marisol were not satisfied. "Aren't they a little too overbearing?" Bridget complained, pointing at Zachary specifically. "Where did your ex-husband find them?" Marisol chimed in. "I can't find a trace of elegance." Dennis, Zachary, and Jaden exchanged awkward glances. They didn't want to talk back to Bridget and Marisol in front of Kim. "Replace all of them," Bridget said. "Think about your image, Kim. What will happen if you let them stand with you at the wedding?" Marisol nodded. "Kim, listen to us. We'll find better groomsmen for you. Your wedding will be even grander." "There's nothing wrong with them," Kim refuted. "They're Stephen's friends. They're usually busy with work, but they took the time to come here today. That says a lot about them." Bridget sneered. "They're looking at us like they're predators and we're the prey. Who knows what they'll do on your wedding night?" "The point is, they're not suitable to be groomsmen," Marisol said. "Replace them." Jasmine watched from the side, and even she was annoyed by their obnoxious behavior. "You 2 are here to be bridesmaids. This is Kim's wedding. Why are you so concerned about the groomsmen?" Bridget's attitude was firm. "No, we can't accept this." We told Kim that if we're not satisfied with the people her ex-husband chose, then she would have to replace them, Marisol said. Did you forget about that? Kim was reaching the end of her patience with their endless complaints. Dennis, Zachary, and Jaden looked particularly displeased with them. Bridget, Marisol, why don't you just let this go? Kim advised. I asked you two to be my bridesmaids because we're good friends. Don't make things difficult for me. How is this making things difficult for you? Marisol retorted. It's not hard to replace 3 people. Bridget was even more determined than before. If you don't replace them, then we can't be your bridesmaids. Stephen couldn't take any more of this. If you don't want to be a bridesmaid, then leave. You two have been making things difficult for us ever since you got off the plane. You weren't satisfied with the restaurant, groomsmen, or bridesmaids. If we let you keep this up, you'll soon be replacing me and Kim as the new bride and groom. Bridget and Marisol were at a loss for words. They didn't think Kim's ex-husband would criticize them like this right in front of her. It took a full minute for them to regain their senses. Did you forget? Kim invited us here, Bridget countered. Do you still want us to leave? Yeah, I want you two to get lost, right this minute, Stephen said bluntly. We've treated you with enough respect ever since we met at the airport. We did whatever you wanted. But what about you two? You're not satisfied with anything. Kim and I are holding the wedding, and we'll decide on the bridesmaids and groomsmen. If you two really were Kim's friends, you would respect her choices. Bridget and Marisol looked at each other. For a second, they didn't know how to respond. Stephen's cold gaze sent shivers down her spine. He wasn't easy to deal with, so they turned to Kim. Kim, are you thinking the same thing as him? Do you want us to get lost? Bridget demanded. Say it, Kim, Marisol said aggressively. Are you going to choose them over us? To be honest, we've always thought of you as our best friend. If you felt the same way, this should be an easy decision to make. When they were in school, Kim was weak-willed and prone to bullying. Bridget and Marisol had come here today thinking that she was the same person she was all those years ago. But Kim had changed. She'd been through a lot over the past few years, and she'd matured. The only reason she hadn't chased Bridget and Marisol away yet was because she was the one who had invited them here. Kim had given them a pass at the airport, but she would not tolerate this. I thought of you two as my good friends, so I tried to satisfy your requests. But all you've been doing is making unreasonable demands. How is that treating me like your best friend? If you two want to leave, then leave. I won't stop you. Bridget gritted her teeth. If that's how you feel, then don't regret it. None of us will regret it, Stephen said. Hurry up and leave. You two aren't all that. We can find other people to replace you as bridesmaids. Bridget and Marisol scowled when Kim sat back and watched. She had no intention of speaking up for them. Bridget dropped all pretenses. Kim, who do you think you are? You're a woman who's divorced once, and you still want to hold a grand wedding? Don't you feel embarrassed? Right, Marisol echoed. Don't you feel any shame? You would become a laughingstock if our classmates found out about this. Kim frowned. Get lost now. Bridget put her hands on her hips. You think we're going to leave just because you want us to? Marisol didn't want to be outdone and assumed the same posture. We'll leave when we feel like it. There's nothing you can do if we want to stay. Kim leveled them with a hard look. It had been many years since they last met. It was mind-blowing how much people could change. First you said you wanted to leave. Now you want to stay? Stephen said. If you can't make up your mind, then we'll do it for you. He motioned to Zachary. Take them outside. It's about time, Zachary said. I was wondering how long it would take. He walked over to Bridget and Marisol. Everyone looked on impassively, including Kim and Jasmine. They had crossed the line. Bridget and Marisol tensed as they watched Zachary coming straight for them. He was tall, and his gaze was menacing. Bridget put on a brave front. What do you want? If you lay a hand on... Before she could finish her sentence, Zachary wrapped his arm around her waist and threw her over his shoulder. She started struggling. How rude! Is this how you treat a lady? Zachary ignored Bridget and did the same to Marisol. She also started screaming. Put me down! Don't you know how to be civilized? The two of them chattered like sparrows. Stephen waved his hand in annoyance. They're so noisy. Take them outside. Zachary was strong enough to carry both women at once. He kicked open the door and set them down on the ground. Then he turned around and went back inside, slamming the door shut behind him. Bridget and Marisol were fuming after Zachary brought them outside the restaurant. They checked out of the hotel and took a cab back to the airport. They didn't want to stay a second longer than they had to in this country. What did you just say? Bridget's shrill voice caught the attention of a few passerbys at the airport. You said we illegally entered the country? Why would we willingly come to a desolate and barbaric place like this? If you hate our country so much, why did you sneak your way here? The airport staff said. As I said, we didn't enter illegally, Bridget argued. Sorry, but we don't have a record of you going through any legal procedures to enter the country. That's ridiculous. I have my entry papers right here. Bridget rummaged through her purse, but the relevant documents she'd used to board the plane were gone. Little did Bridget know that Rosalind had disposed of her and Marisol's entry documents. This time, it was their turn to be put in an awkward situation. The staff eyed their empty hands. No entry permits? I can tell that you two smuggled into the country. We've already done an investigation on you. You're in the process of applying for permanent residence overseas. Bridget and Marisol's high and mighty attitude had disappeared. What happens now? We'll have to send you out of the country. In layman's terms, we're kicking you out. What? You're a bunch of barbarians. How can you treat us like this? Bridget said. If anyone found out that they were sent out of the country for illegal entry, they would never be able to get rid of the shame. Marisol cursed at the staff. Just send us away. We never planned on staying in a place like this anyway. The staff helped them settle the formalities and impatiently sent them on their way. Bridget and Marisol grabbed their luggage and boarded the plane, determined to never set foot in this country again. After the incident at the restaurant, Kim didn't care where Bridget and Marisol went. She'd cut off all ties with them and focused on preparing for the wedding. As for Stephen, he asked the top actress at Tanith Corporation, Julia, and the director of finance and personnel at the Wyvern Group, Annika, if they would be Kim's bridesmaids alongside Rosalind. They agreed in a heartbeat. Julia and Annika were much better bridesmaids than Bridget and Marisol. The groomsmen remained the same, Dennis, Zachary, and Jaden. The three of them, along with Rosalind, were fearsome existences on the battlefield. Either one of their appearances at the wedding would shake the world. After confirming the bridesmaids and groomsmen, Stephen continued to send out invitations. As the commander-in-chief, many high-ranking officials were acquainted with him. For example, the military base commanders. While Stephen was sorting through the invitations, he received a call from Adrian Wynne, who told him that he would be attending his wedding. Stephen had learned most of his techniques from the priest, but when he joined the army, it was Adrian's training that unlocked his potential and allowed him to reach the height of commander-in-chief. Naturally, Stephen was looking forward to seeing Adrian again at the wedding. Kim was also busy sending invitations to her circle of friends. She took a break in the afternoon and went to Stephen's room. She was impressed by the pile of invitations on his desk. I didn't know you had so many friends. From her perspective, although Stephen lacked ambition, he had a talent for interpersonal relationships. He was friendly and easy to get along with. Stephen watched Kim casually pick up one of his invitations. She couldn't have imagined that his guests were anything but ordinary. Kim, I know the Cassidy and Haynes families have always thought of me as a useless good-for-nothing who showed up on your doorstep one day, but their impression of me will change during our wedding. I'll give you a surprise that you'll never forget. I want you to know that your husband is reliable. You don't have to shoulder everything on your own. You can depend on me. Stephen had long since decided that he would reveal his identity as the commander-in-chief at their wedding. Whether it was the Cassidy family or the Haynes family, he was sure that their jaws would drop. This would be a surprise to Kim. Everyone saw him as a nobody, and they all criticized Kim for marrying him. But that would all change at the wedding. Kim gave a warm smile. I'm looking forward to it. Ever since they married 3 years ago, the Cassidy family had looked down on Stephen, ostracized him, and publicly called him a freeloader. He'd always accepted it and never argued too much. But Stephen had changed ever since the Cassidy family's annual gathering earlier in the year. He'd surprised her time and time again, and Kim realized that he'd had many secrets she had yet to discover. She believed that the surprise he'd prepared for her on their wedding day would be one of them. News of Stephen and Kim's wedding spread to the neighboring states. The Addams family was no exception. After all, a wedding of the century was eye-catching on its own. The previous head of the Addams family, Castile Addams, was having a meeting with Erickson and the other low-ranking members in the main hall. "Isn't the groom Stephen? He's the son of that woman who I forced Terrence to give up on back then." "Yes, that's him," Erickson answered carefully. Castile became even angrier. "You all are part of our family, and you're capable of crushing the royal families in New York City by yourself, but you failed to get rid of an illegitimate child." "The situation's more complicated than it seems," Erickson explained. "He's not the same person he used to be. Have you heard of the Wyvern Group? Stephen is the owner, and the royal families in New York City are under his command." "Sounds like he's more capable than before," Castile said. "But the Wyvern Group and the royal families are nothing worth mentioning in front of our family." "Mr. Castile is right," someone called out. "Stephen will only ever be an illegitimate child. The only reason he was able to achieve that much is because he has our family's blood in him." "If you ask me, his existence is tarnishing our reputation," someone else said. "Making such a big fuss and calling his wedding the wedding of the century is looking down on our family." While they were engaged in a heated discussion, the current head of the Addams family, Terrence, was staying at his private residence in the suburbs. He was in the study with a brush in hand. The study was luxurious. Various porcelain antiques decorated the room. Each one was worth more than $100 million. They had been placed everywhere in the room as if they were common houseplants. Even the brush in Terrence's hand was worth several $100,000. It was clear that his life was extravagant. With a flurry of strokes, a flamboyant piece of calligraphy was completed. Terrence was in a good mood. His official appointment as the head of the Addams family was in a few days. Soon, his position would be official. Terrence carelessly tossed his expensive brush aside and held up the paper to examine his work. Victoria and Stephen couldn't compare to inheriting an empire of power. He would never regret his decision. The clacking of heels sounded outside the study. A woman was calling his name. It was Terrence's wife, Laurel. She was a member of the Phoenix family, which was only second to the Addams family. Laurel started complaining the second she stepped into the study. "Were you writing calligraphy? How are you so calm at a time like this?" Terrence glanced at her before shifting his gaze back to the paper. "You're someone from the Phoenix family, and yet you're so easily flustered. Remember, you're part of the Addams family now. There's nothing to be afraid of." This was the confidence of someone who had been at the top of their ranks for a long time. Laurel had been fascinated by Terrence's imposing and confident personality ever since she married into the family. The Phoenix family was influential, but she still felt she was inferior to Terrence. Even so, Terrence's confidence managed to calm her down. "What happened?" Terrence asked once Laurel's anxiety eased. "Do you remember what happened before you married me?" That was all it took for Terrence to understand. Laurel was referring to his past relationship with Victoria. At that time, they were both young. He and Victoria had fallen in love at first sight. But because her background was miles away from his own, he experienced his first crisis as the successor of the family. Terrence had never forgotten that incident. He'd kept the memory in his heart so that he would never make the same mistake again. "What's the problem?" He was sure that he had wrapped up any loose ends with Victoria years ago. There shouldn't be any problems now. Laurel rolled her eyes. "Are you really asking me that? When you married me, you told me that Victoria was placed under house arrest in a small town by the sea. Do you remember that?" "Yes, that's what I said. I delegated the responsibility to Erickson. She shouldn't have been able to escape with him on the watch. And I know what kind of person Victoria is. She would never leave without permission." "Have you been living under a rock? Didn't you place a memorial tablet in her house? It's been shattered, and she left the town a while ago." Terrence's calligraphy slipped out of his hands. "What do you mean? Victoria wouldn't have the courage to do that." It wasn't just her. Anyone would feel threatened as long as the Addams family was involved. "Of course she didn't," Laurel said. "But there is someone who's brave enough." Terrence frowned. "Are you talking about her son?" "Who else would I be talking about? Didn't you tell me he was dealt with years ago? But he suddenly made a reappearance, shattered the memorial tablet, and took Victoria away. Do you know what this means?" Terrence sucked in a breath. This was an important time for him. The succession ceremony was only days away, but Stephen and Victoria were on the loose. If the rest of the family found out, there was no guarantee how his ceremony would turn out. Terrence was aware that they'd failed to dispose of Stephen 6 years ago. That was why he'd sent multiple people after him. But even his younger sister Melinda had returned in failure. He'd been keeping this a secret from Laurel and stopping paying attention to it because he was the head of the Addams family. It shouldn't be difficult for him to get rid of one person, and he didn't think Stephen and Victoria would appear right before his succession ceremony. "Terrence, tell me exactly what's going on," Laurel demanded. "You told me he died 6 years ago. What happened? It's impossible for someone to revive from the dead." Instead of explaining, Terrence grabbed his phone and scrolled through his contacts. It had been a while since he'd contacted Erickson and Cedric. He called Cedric first, but he didn't pick up. Erickson was the only one who answered. Terrence learned that not only had Stephen killed Cedric, but he'd also broken Erickson's arms. How is that possible? He's just an illegitimate child. How could he have defeated 2 people who could crush the royal families of New York City? There has to be someone behind this. "Who?" Laurel asked. Terrence's eyes flashed. "Vincent. He's helping Stephen." Trigger warning. The following episode contains descriptions of violence which some listeners may find disturbing. It is intended for mature audiences. Listener discretion is advised. When Terrence was appointed the successor, Vincent Addams became his personal subordinate. Vincent had followed him around everywhere, and he'd even witnessed his relationship with Victoria. It was precisely because of Vincent that the Addams family hadn't discovered their relationship until much later. Vincent supported them even after they grew apart because of the gap between their families. He was fond of Stephen after Victoria gave birth, and he'd also advocated for Terrence to marry her instead of Laurel. However, Vincent was only a subordinate. No one paid attention to him. Terrence called Vincent over. "Kneel," he ordered. Vincent was older than him, but Terrence was the head of the family. Even if he told Vincent to die, he would have to comply. Vincent got on his knees. "Do you know why I asked you to kneel?" Vincent knew the moment he saw Terrence and Laurel's expressions. They'd found out what he'd done, but he couldn't admit it until they confronted him. "No, I don't understand why you called me here." "All right, then I'll help you understand," Terrence said. 6 years ago, Laurel found someone to read her fortune. They said that Stephen was bad luck, and he would bring ruin to the family. That's when I decided to officially abandon him and kick him out of the family. I planned to dispose of him shortly afterward to prevent future complications. I left you in charge, and when you came back, you told me that you'd taken care of it. But not only is Stephen alive, he even freed Victoria from that town. Tell me, what's going on?" Vincent had been discovered, so he could only confess. "So you already know everything. 6 years ago, I felt sympathy for Stephen and let him escape. He's your son. I couldn't bring myself to kill him." "So it really was you," Terrence said darkly. Laurel was furious. "Terrence only has one son, and that's Johan. Stephen is not a part of this family. He doesn't deserve the surname Addams." Vincent shook his head. "Stephen was with us for many years. He's more competent than you think. It's a pity to kill him. In any case, the fact remains that I couldn't do it. When Stephen was being chased by the Addams family 6 years ago, he hadn't met the priest yet. If Vincent hadn't gone easy on him, perhaps he would have been killed." Terrence flew into a rage. He pulled out a sword from the shelf beside him. I told you 6 years ago that he had to die. If it weren't for you, he wouldn't be causing problems for me right now. Don't you know that he was a disgrace to our family? This is an important time for me. I'm about to officially take over the family. Are you trying to ruin my future?" Laurel was even crazier. She grabbed the porcelain antiques and threw them on the floor. Millions of dollars were gone in an instant. "Who gave you the right to make a decision?" she yelled. "Is your brain made of water? Everyone thought that the incident back then was done and dealt with, but now we're in this predicament because of your dirty tricks. Did you really think Terrence's position was secure? His succession ceremony is in a few days. A minor mistake could become a fatal mistake, and this is a serious one." "Mr. Terrence, Miss Laurel, I know that my actions have affected your future, but I couldn't take your son's life," Vincent said apologetically. Laurel gave him a cold look. "You made your decision a long time ago. Surely that means you knew this would happen." Vincent met her gaze. "I knew that this day would come sooner or later, but even if I could go back in time, I would still make the same decision. Stephen is your son, Mr. Terrence. Is your reputation more important than him?" Terrence aimed his sword until it was a mere inch away from Vincent's neck. "Do you know what you're saying? It seems you still haven't realized the mistake you've made." Vincent could feel the sharp tip of the sword against his skin. It had already gotten to this point. He was prepared to die by Terrence's hand. But Terrence didn't move. "Why are you still hesitating?" Laurel asked impatiently. "Hurry up and get rid of him. Disobedience is not tolerated in this family." She grabbed the hilt of the sword. Just as she was about to slit Vincent's neck, Terrence stopped her. "Don't be reckless. We can't kill him yet." "Why not?" Vincent was well aware of the reason. Terrence wasn't hesitating because he was showing mercy. He didn't care about the low-ranking members of the family, not even those who had been by his side since he was a child. Terrence could end his life at any time. If he was hesitating now, then it could only mean that there was some benefit to keeping him alive. "Sure enough," Terrence said. "If I kill him, how am I going to explain his death to the previous head of the family? If we know that Stephen took Victoria away, he would have received the news by now." Laurel caught on. "When he confronts us, we'll shift the blame to Vincent and make him suffer the consequences. Your reputation will be safe." However, she glanced at Vincent in contempt. "He ruined our plans, so I can't let him off so easily." Terrence's lips curled into a twisted grin. "We can't kill him, but we could cripple him. Laurel, don't you feel betrayed by his actions?" He held out the sword. "Here, I'll give you the opportunity to teach him a lesson." Laurel took the sword without hesitation. Vincent knew that he wouldn't be able to escape punishment, so he closed his eyes, waiting for what was about to come. Vincent had a higher status than most of the low-ranking members, but that meant nothing in front of the head of the family. Laurel was from a family that only ranked second to the Addams family. She was just as cruel and void of compassion as Terrence. She was someone who could kill without batting an eye. In her eyes, Vincent's life was no different from the grass on the lawn. Laurel slashed twice in quick succession. Blood stained her dress as Vincent's arms were severed. Terrence watched from a distance, careful not to get blood on his clothes. "Did that help you relieve your anger? If not, then give him another 2 strikes." "Forget it," Laurel said, flicking the sword and staining the desk nearby with blood. "He'll die if I do that again. Now, we should focus on the problem at hand. How should we deal with Stephen and Victoria?" "To be honest, I would like to head to Washington, D.C. right now and get rid of them, but I can't do that. His wedding has been gaining traction, and almost everyone has heard about it by now. It's not convenient for me to make a move." Laurel nodded. "Your succession ceremony is right around the corner. You can't do anything that might risk your reputation. But if we can't get rid of them, what should we do?" Her subordinate spoke up. "I have an idea." She was quick-witted and cunning, so Laurel thought highly of her. "What is it?" Laurel asked. "If we can't kill them, then we can bring them here and force them to comply with our demands." Before she could finish, Laurel slapped her across the face. "Are you out of your mind? Do you want me and Terrence to pick them up and bring them back here? They're people of low status. They don't have a right to take one step inside our home. Stephen should be grateful we let him stay for as long as he did." Terrence agreed. If we let them stay here, they'll use their connections with me to try and become part of our family again. But it doesn't matter even if Stephen has our family's blood. He has to rely on his own capabilities to have the qualifications to enter our ranks. Stephen was his illegitimate son, but he still had the noble blood of the Addams family inside him. He was looking forward to Stephen's achievements. At that time, Terrence's position at the head of the family would be secure, and Stephen would no longer be a threat to him. The Addams family only valued competency, and he would be able to join the family again. I doubt he could ever achieve anything noteworthy, Laurel said. Mom, Dad, you're wrong. Johann pushed open the door and came into the study. You may not know this, but he looks down on our family. He told me himself that he doesn't want to come back. Terrence and Laurel exchanged a surprised glance. Both of them had grown up hearing about the Addams family's prestige. No one had ever looked down on them. Their family's name was a source of fear. People ran as far as they could to avoid getting tangled up with them. Stephen was the first to antagonize the Addams family. Johann, did he really say that? Terrence asked in disbelief. Why would I joke about something like that? It concerns our family's reputation. Actually, he called me recently. He has some nerve, Laurel hissed. What did he say to you? I thought he called me to beg me to spare him, but he used me to provoke our family instead. He wanted me to pass on a message to Dad. He said that he and Victoria are living a good life, and that sooner or later, he'll make us pay for what he did to his mother. Terrence slammed his fist on the desk worth millions. The surface cracked. I thought it would be fine to let him come back to the family after I officially became the head and he achieved something. But there's no cure for stupidity. Laurel scoffed. He wants to attack our family. I don't know where he got his confidence from, but that's not happening. Stephen has my blood, but his bloodline isn't pure, Terrence said. He doesn't have the qualifications to be a member of our family. It doesn't matter how much he achieves. Terrence and Laurel's greatest achievement was Johann. He was the pride of the family. Back then, Terrence had won the fight for the successor position among many candidates. Johann was seen as the next successor from the moment he was born. After Johann recovered from his illness without a bone marrow transplant using his own strength, the entire family saw him as a descendant with a flawless bloodline. After all, Terrence was the head of the Addams family, while Laurel was from the Phoenix family. You don't have to get so angry over a nobody like him, Johann said calmly. Think of his words as a wild dog barking. Dad, you don't have to lift a finger. I'll take care of it. I'll show him that the family is out of his reach. All right, I'll leave it to you, Terrence said proudly. Make a trip to the district. It should be an easy task, and it'll be a good experience for you. Johann had the future of the Addams family on his shoulders. It would be a disaster if anything happened to him. Even when he was in the suburbs near Washington, D.C., he would be accompanied by thousands of bodyguards whenever he left the house. Johann turned to Laurel after getting Terrence's permission. Do you agree with me going to the district? Your father is right, Laurel replied. You'll be inheriting the family in the future. Make sure you do a good job. What do you think about Johann's security, Terrence? The original lineup of bodyguards will remain the same. I'll mobilize another group to protect him. That's not enough, Laurel interrupted. I'll transfer another group of bodyguards from the Phoenix family. Also, we should plan the route in advance. Yes, we have to make sure that nothing goes wrong. Terrence and Laurel were beginning to plan down to the very last detail. Johann held up a hand. Stop. You two are always so overprotective. It feels like you think I'm not capable enough. Of course we know what you're capable of, but you have the future of the family in your hands, Terrence said seriously. We have to ensure your safety. Johann sighed and left it at that. All right then. Anyway, Stephen's wedding will take place in a few days. It won't go as planned. Wait for my good news. We'll wait for your return, Terrence said. Stay safe, Laurel added. Johann was about to leave when he noticed Vincent lying next to the table in a pool of blood. Did Vincent violate our family's rules? Terrence brought him up to speed. A dark look passed over Johan's face as his lips curled into a sinister smile. So that's what happened. He crouched in front of Vincent and grabbed his hair, lifting him up. Does it hurt? Do you want to die? You can't. Stephen's alive because of you. Do you know how hurt he'll be if he finds out that his savior kicked the bucket? It just so happens that his wedding is coming up. It'll be rude of me to show up empty-handed. Johan's methods were crueler than Terrence's. Falling into his hands was a fate worse than hell. The Addams family was based in Washington, D.C., but like Terrence, their residence was located in the suburbs of Maryland. They were quite a distance from the district, so a majority of them had only just found out that Stephen had survived. While chaos was ensuing in the family, Stephen was busy preparing for his wedding with Kim. It was their first wedding, but to outsiders, it was no different from a second wedding. But Stephen had meticulously made preparations. For example, the ring and necklace he'd prepared held a special meaning, and the craftsmanship was exquisite. While he was making last-minute arrangements, he was also waiting for David. Johan's threat had been made invalid, so David hurried over to the district from his family's mansion in the suburbs. It had been 6 long years since they'd last seen each other, so he pestered Stephen for a hug when they met up. Stephen, your wedding is coming up and I don't want to ruin your mood, but I have something to tell you. What is it? Remember what I told you on the phone last time? I already know that you're from the Addams family. They know about you too. Their entire family is talking about you. Johan will be coming for you soon. Stephen quirked a brow. So, you want me to hide? No, their spies are everywhere. They can find anyone, even if they run to the ends of the earth. They have their eye on you, so as your friend, I have a suggestion, but I don't know if it's appropriate. Go ahead. You don't have to be reserved in front of me. David hesitated. I think you should visit the Addams family and ask Johan for help. I'm not telling you to go back to them, but your life is at risk. You can't keep running away. Stephen smiled in amusement. You want me to plead with the Addams family? During his time with the Addams family, he was bullied to no end, but he'd never asked for help from anyone. The Addams family is prideful and values capability. With your current achievements, if you apologize or kneel for a few days, I think they'll let you go with minor consequences. At least you'll be able to keep your life. And it's not just them who know you're alive. Many families know that now. They'll be coming after you too. If the Addams family agrees to let you go, the others will have to think twice before making a move. That's a good idea, but I'm afraid the Addams family doesn't have the qualifications to request an apology from me or make me kneel. Stephen wasn't lying. Terrence was his father, but he was the commander-in-chief. Even the previous head of the Addams family, Castile Addams, wouldn't be able to make him apologize or kneel. David heaved a sigh. Stephen was as stubborn as he was 6 years ago. You should work on that stubborn personality of yours. If Stephen had surrendered to the Addams family back then, maybe things wouldn't have ended up like this. David's family had a commander medallion in their possession, but Stephen didn't have anything. Johan was free to target him at any time. David, you don't have to try and persuade me. I've already thought about how to deal with the grudge between me and the Addams family. Stephen was planning to bring Victoria to the Addams family and confronting Terrence after the wedding. But David didn't know that. Since Stephen was being stubborn, he decided to drop it for now. Stephen was his friend, but he couldn't watch him die like this. He decided to have a talk with Victoria later. Stephen gave David a reassuring smile and suggested taking him to see their old friends in Santa Ana. When they arrived, Stephen purchased a bottle of wine and brought David to a graveyard behind the mountain. David sighed when he saw Richard's name on the tombstone. He was happier than any of us, and he was the most talented. I can't believe he left this early. Maybe this is fate. Do you believe in fate? His death was the result of a conspiracy, Stephen told David about the incident in the past. I didn't think something that big would happen after I returned to the district. Stephen poured 3 cups of wine. David picked up a cup and sprinkled the contents over the tombstone as a toast to Richard. How's Noah doing? David asked. When Stephen founded Felicity Corporation 6 years ago, he recruited 3 talents, Richard, Noah, and David. They were the foundation, and it was because of them that the company developed so rapidly. David did want to see his old friends again, but he also wanted to ask Noah to persuade Stephen to lower his head to the Addams family. If Stephen continued to be stubborn, he would end up like Richard. "Noah is the director of the technology department at the Wyvern Group," Stephen replied. "We're developing a new product, so we've been taking measures to keep the project confidential. You can be an exception. I'll take you there." The technology department was as busy as in the old days. Noah had been working separately from his research and development team for half a month. When he found out that Stephen was here with David, he came out to meet them. "David, it's been so long. I didn't think I'd get to see you again." Noah had aged a lot compared to the last time David had seen him. "You look more tired than I remember." On the way here, Stephen had filled him in on what had happened between Noah and Mary. Noah had spent the past 6 years living like he was dead. How was that any different from Richard? "If it weren't for Stephen, I would still be a walking corpse. I'm a lot better than I used to be. Devoting my time and energy to doing what I love has been helping." "I'm glad to hear that. Actually, Noah, I'm here because—" Stephen interjected and asked Noah to get back to work. Then he pulled David aside. "I know what you're thinking. You want to ask Noah to persuade me about what we talked about earlier, right?" "To tell you the truth, yes," David admitted. "That is what I had in mind." Stephen patted his shoulder. "You don't have to think about that. I know you're worried, but the Addams family won't be able to do anything to me. After the wedding, I'll confront them myself. For now, let's head back to the district and focus on the wedding. I won't let anyone cause trouble, not even the Addams family." He was so confident that David could only agree. As Kim and Stephen's wedding approached, Johan began to take action. Today, all flights in Maryland were being delayed by 3 hours. Within this time period, over 100 private planes took off from the airport. Their destination was Washington, D.C. One of the more conspicuous private planes had the name Addams plastered on the front. Johan was taking this plane. The other 100 or so planes were escorting him to prepare for any unforeseen emergency. Outside the airport was a parking lot of more than 100 land cruisers. After Johan's private plane took off, they followed the route to the district. It wasn't an exaggeration to compare Johan's security team to a regiment. Not a single article in the media reported sightings of an entourage of this scale. The Addams family had sealed off all information channels. Even passengers at the airport today wouldn't know the reason why their flight was being delayed. This was only a fraction of the Addams family's true strength. To ensure that everything went smoothly, Terrence instructed the Addams family's branches nearby to move out. They went into hiding in the district to open up a path for Johan. Johan peered outside the window at the clouds. If Stephen were here, he would have understood the gap between them. The distance was as vast as the sky. Which genius in the country can surpass me? His bodyguard tried to flatter him. "No one, Mr. Johan." Johan shook his head. "I know my own limits. I've achieved great things, but there is one person above me, and that's the Commander-in-Chief." His achievements were insignificant compared to the commander, whose heroic feats were unprecedented. It was Johan's goal to surpass him, but it would be difficult to catch up. "In this country, the Commander-in-Chief is number 1. I'm only number 2, but we're far from being on the same level. If I ever meet him, I wonder what he would think of me. Would I be as insignificant as Stephen?" Johan suddenly realized that he was belittling himself. He must be crazy to compare himself to Stephen. "Stephen can't be compared to someone like me." Someone spoke up on the other side of the aisle. "That's not necessarily true, is it?" Johan had tied Vincent to the seat across the aisle on the plane. After Vincent found out about Stephen's achievements, he began to think that Johan alone wouldn't be enough to get rid of him. Johan cast a sidelong glance at Vincent. "What did you just say?" "The only reason you got to where you are today is because of the Addams family's resources and training. Stephen was with us for many years, but he never received anything, not even the resources provided to the lowest-ranking members of the family," Vincent said. Johan didn't respond. I did let Stephen go 6 years ago, but he managed to escape detection from the Addams family. He even became the owner of the Wyvern Group, and the royal families in New York City are under his command. If he could achieve all of that without assistance, what do you think he could achieve if he had your family's resources? Vincent continued. So what you mean is, Stephen's stronger than me? Johann said in a low tone. Yes, Vincent answered without hesitation. He just got lucky, Johann spat. He can't compare to me. Don't deceive yourself, Mr. Johann. Stephen is stronger than you. As the successor of the Addams family, Johann was used to being flattered since childhood. A mere subordinate looking down on him infuriated him. He grabbed Vincent's neck. Say that again. Who's stronger? Even if you ask me 100 times, my answer will always be Stephen, Vincent gasped. Stubborn old man. Johann's eyes flashed as he pulled out a dagger from his sleeve and plunged it into Vincent's shoulder. Blood splattered on the seats nearby. Tell me, between me and Stephen, who's stronger? Vincent's answer remained the same. Johann's features twisted, and he tightened his grip on the dagger. His bodyguard tried to intervene. Mr. Johann, Vincent might die on the plane if you stab him again. Aren't you planning to use him to deal with Stephen? Johann stilled. After a moment, he went back to his seat and wiped the blood off the blade. Another bodyguard came over and reported they'd arrived in Washington, D.C. The captain was preparing to land. Johann looked out the window. The clouds parted, and he saw the district appear before his eyes. The other planes had already landed, and the Branch families nearby were waiting at the airport to pick Johann up. There was no media coverage. No one knew that the successor of the Addams family was in Washington, D.C. In the Land Rover parked near the airport, Johann looked around in disdain. Is this the district? It's so noisy here. No wonder Stephen's so full of himself after staying in a place like this. His bodyguards kept quiet. None of them dared to refute it. How many days until Stephen's wedding? Johann asked. 3 days later, one of the branch leaders replied. Johann grinned. It wouldn't be long now. He had a big surprise planned for Stephen. Meanwhile, Stephen was checking the wedding preparations to make sure that everything had been arranged. The wedding had to be perfect. Dennis laughed when he saw Stephen patrolling the wedding venue for the nth time. Relax, Mr. Addams. Everything's ready. I've never seen you this nervous. Don't worry, Rosalind said. It's a grand wedding, but it's mainly because it's your wedding. Stephen was the commander-in-chief, so naturally, the guests were high-ranking officials. Each guest was more fearsome than the last. Stephen's gaze swept over the venue again. Okay, I'll leave the finishing touches to you. Callan and the others are coming tomorrow, right? Yeah, they'll be here at 10 o'clock in the morning, Dennis replied. Okay, let's pick them up at the airport tomorrow. The Cassidy and Haynes families had arrived in Washington, D.C. earlier that day. They were reluctant to let them hold the wedding, but Stephen had confidently declared that he would give them all a surprise at the wedding. Stephen, listen up, Helen warned. We didn't come here because we approve of your relationship with Kim. Remember what you told us? If this surprise of yours doesn't meet our expectations, then we have a right to put a stop to the wedding. Don't think that just because Kim is pregnant that we won't do anything, Natalie said. Stephen, I suggest you prepare yourself, Kyle added. If your surprise isn't what you make it out to be, then you'll have no relation to Kim's child. Gordon agreed. Even the Cassidy family doesn't want the child. You'll never be a father. Of course, it's another story if you fulfill your promise. All of them were ganging up on him, but Stephen wasn't fazed. I guarantee you'll all be shocked at the wedding. Look forward to it. Helen snorted. How shocking could it be? She didn't have even 1% of confidence in him. Stephen gave them a cryptic smile. You'll never see it coming, so I'm giving you all a warning now. Don't pass out from shock on the day of. No one believed him. Mavis rolled her eyes. Please stop with the jokes. On the other hand, Kim was anticipating Stephen's surprise. He'd been preparing for this day for a long time. She was sure that he wouldn't let her down. Kim took his hand in hers. I believe in you. That was enough for Stephen. It didn't matter if the Cassidy and Haynes families didn't believe him. Kim's trust in him was all he needed. Grandma, Mom, Dad, you can check out the venue and see if there's anything you want to change, Stephen said. I'll be going to the airport tomorrow morning to pick up my friends. They'll be attending the wedding. That's perfect, Helen said. We have a few family friends coming tomorrow morning. Take a few of us with you. Sure, no problem. Stephen and Kim left to attend to other things while the Cassidy and Haynes families scrutinized the venue. With the 4 great generals present, the preparations for the wedding had been very thorough. The happiest person there was Victoria. During her time in the town by the sea, she would never have thought a day like this would come. She'd reunited with her son and her daughter-in-law, and she even had an opportunity to attend their wedding. Helen frowned when she saw Victoria. Isn't that Stephen's mother? Rebecca looked up from the wedding program. I think she's going to be at the wedding. She might even give a speech on stage as Kim's mother-in-law, Harry added. Helen gave Victoria a dirty look. Absolutely not. Kim has a net worth of $100 billion. She's a successful career woman. If Stephen's mother goes on stage, she'll affect our family's reputations, including Kim's. Victoria, do you really want to attend the wedding? Mavis asked. Victoria nodded. Well, you can't. You should understand that Kim is like a celebrity in the district. Her every move is being monitored by the media. Even her pregnancy caused a storm in the district. Do you remember that? Yes, I do, Victoria said quietly. It's good that you remember, Mavis went on. If you want what's best for Kim, then don't show up at the wedding. Reporters will be there, and you know what they're like. They grab onto any weaknesses they can find. You don't want a repeat of her recent scandal, do you? Victoria wanted to defend herself, but she couldn't get the words out. You still want to attend? Helen asked. If you don't agree to stay home, then I'll tell them to cancel the wedding right now. Wait, don't do that, Victoria said quickly. I won't go. Then it's decided. If Stephen and Kim ask, just tell them that you didn't want to come. Don't mention us. Understand? I understand. Victoria felt wronged, but there was nothing she could do. The next morning, Stephen asked Dennis to prepare a few cars. The 4 great generals accompanied him to the airport, and a few members of the Cassidy family followed them after breakfast. The family friends they were here to pick up were dressed extravagantly. They didn't have any interest in the Cassidy family at first, but after they heard that Kim's net worth had reached $100 billion, they started mingling with them. They even took the initiative to ask if they could attend the wedding. Do you see that? Rebecca asked proudly. They're elites from the upper class. With them here, Kim will shine at the wedding, Harry said. Rebecca crossed her arms. Are your guests as prominent as ours? 4 people followed Stephen to the airport. They were dressed in low-profile outfits, and they didn't look like they were from wealthy families, so the Cassidy family didn't think much of them. Stephen didn't bother responding. Soon, a small group of people emerged from the crowd at the exit. They were dressed in casual clothes and didn't seem like anyone special. Mr. Adams, they're here, Dennis whispered. When Callan and his group saw Stephen and the 4 great generals, they hurried over to greet them. One of the Cassidy family's friends recognized them. Wait, is the groom here to pick those people up? I think I saw them on the plane just now. They were flying economy class. It's not, I think, another friend chimed in. I saw them too. They were in economy. Doesn't that mean they couldn't afford first class? Maybe the groom doesn't have enough money to reimburse them for the plane tickets. The Cassidy family snickered. The difference between their guests and Stephen's guests were painfully obvious. What they didn't know was that each one of Stephen's guests was of high status. It was thanks to them that the country could enjoy peace and prosperity. If word got out that the 5th great general, Callan Meadows, the military base commanders, and other notable people were gathering in Washington, D.C., the news would probably turn the world upside down. People would panic and wonder if the country was in danger. Each of them had the ability to suppress a region, but when they took off their military uniforms, they were no different from an ordinary citizen. They were here to attend Kim and Stephen's wedding, and it was a private matter, so they didn't want to draw unnecessary attention to themselves. Everything was carried out in a low-profile manner. They had chosen to fly economy class, and they would be paying out of their own pockets. The more Rebecca looked at them, the more unpleasant they seemed.
Who are they? They seem kind of intimidating.
It seems like these are the only kinds of friends that Stephen is capable of making, Harry said. None of them can compare to our guests. Callan and the others were furious when they heard Harry and Rebecca ridiculing Stephen so brazenly. Callan clenched his fists and took a step forward. Mr. Adams, let me teach them a lesson. Stephen stopped him. Never mind them. They're Kim's paternal family. Don't start a conflict with them before the wedding. Besides, I'm going to reveal my identity tomorrow. It'll be a huge shock that I'm not sure they'll ever be ready for. That was what Stephen wanted, so Callan let it go. Stephen took Callan and the others to the hotel with the Cassidy family and their friends. Kim, Helen, Gordon, Mavis, and the rest of the Cassidy and Haynes families were waiting for them. He asked Callan and the others to introduce themselves. Callan went first. He gave Kim a friendly smile. It's been a while, Miss Kim. We've met before. I'm Cal, and I'm from the border. Kim returned his greeting politely. The military base commanders introduced themselves without giving away their identities. The Cassidy and Haynes families were regular wealthy families, and they wouldn't understand what the titles meant. Aside from Callan and the military base commanders, there were 4 others who had come today. It's your turn, Stephen said with a smile. Most people knew that multiple military bases had been set up across the country as a precaution, but few were aware of the 4 gates stationed in the north, east, west, and south. They were guarded by 4 gatekeepers. Helen was confused when they introduced themselves with their titles. What gatekeeper? Have you been reading too many fantasy novels? The rest of the family mocked them. How embarrassing. If their names were spread to our social circles, everyone would laugh at us. Birds of a feather flock together. People like Stephen can only make mediocre friends. Natalie and Kyle couldn't bear to watch, while Kim and Victoria were puzzled. They'd never heard of these gates before. But the 4 gatekeepers weren't the end. Just as Stephen was about to introduce the rest of them, Helen interrupted him. Forget it. One look and you can tell that they're no different from these gatekeepers. They're your friends, so do whatever you want with them. The Cassidy and Haynes families lost interest and walked away, leaving Kim and Victoria alone in the room. They were confused, but they gave all of Stephen's friends a warm welcome. Tomorrow was the wedding, and most of the guests had arrived. There were some who couldn't attend due to various reasons. The gifted doctor, Lionel Sloan, was one of these people. He'd recently been entrusted with the responsibility of providing medical treatment to the higher-ups of the country. He was busy, but he took the time to give Stephen a video call. Congratulations, Mr. Adams. It's a shame that I won't be able to attend the wedding. That's okay. I'll ask the photographer to record the wedding procession. You can watch it during your free time. When I'm done with my work here, I'll come and visit you, Stephen replied. I'm looking forward to it. Let's have a drink when you arrive. As soon as their video call ended, Stephen received another call, then another. His phone didn't stop ringing. Aside from Lionel, there were many others who were calling to congratulate him. Kim was impressed with how wide Stephen's social circle was. He was quite popular. The Cassidy and Haynes families ignored him. They didn't think his friends were worth paying attention to. In the late afternoon, Stephen received a call from Amy. She and Vanessa were both in New York City for an internship, and they couldn't find the time to take a few days off for the wedding. Congratulations, Stephen. My beautiful sister is yours again. Stephen rolled his eyes. We were never really divorced in the first place. We didn't have a wedding when we were married 3 years ago, so this time around, I'll be giving Kim the perfect wedding. I can't let your sister have any regrets. You'd better treat her well, Amy warned. Vanessa wants to talk to you too. Vanessa's face came into view. I wish you and Kim a happy marriage. Before Stephen could respond, Vanessa looked away from the screen. Amy, why are you crying? What's wrong? Is she okay? I'm not crying, he heard Amy yell. I just have dust in my eyes, okay? Vanessa blinked. Really? Really? Amy reappeared with a smile on her face. Stephen chatted with them for a while before hanging up. It was around 10 o'clock in the evening when his phone quieted down. Everyone knew that tomorrow was the wedding. Stephen was the groom, and they didn't want to make him stay up too late. The night passed smoothly, and the day of the wedding finally arrived. The Cassidy and Haynes families got up early to head to the venue to prepare. They each put on a bright and fancy outfit. The ladies were getting ready in the same room. Kim and Stephen couldn't find Victoria anywhere. "Rosalind, have you seen my mother?" "I'll go find her." Rosalind left and returned in less than 5 minutes with Victoria. "You're not coming to the wedding?" Stephen asked, confused by the sudden news. "Why not?" "It's not that I don't want to attend, but I'm not feeling well today. I don't want to overdo it and make a scene at the wedding. I should stay here and rest for today." Stephen looked Victoria over in concern. "I'll call a doctor for you." "Stephen, stop dawdling. The wedding's about to begin," Helen said. "You don't have to worry about your mother. There's lots of us here. We'll take good care of her." It was almost time, and it wouldn't look good if Kim and Stephen were late. They asked Victoria a few more questions to make sure she was okay before leaving in a hurry. Victoria wanted to attend the wedding, but her presence might affect Kim's image. That had happened once before. She could only watch her son and daughter-in-law's wedding from afar as a bystander. The wedding venue was lively and filled with guests. Many reporters were also present. Kim's recent scandal concerning her pregnancy had caused a huge stir in the district, so by now, everyone knew about her wedding. Before the scandal, Kim was already famous within the business industry. Now, she was no different from a celebrity, and the media was very interested in this wedding of the century, as they called it. Helen looked around the crowded venue and let out a sigh. "If it weren't for Kim, none of these socialites and celebrities would be here. It's a pity that Kim is settling for a good-for-nothing like Stephen," Mavis said, also feeling regretful. "What's the point in talking about that now?" Gordon said. "The wedding's already begun. Our only hope is Stephen's surprise. I hope he won't let us down." Natalie didn't look optimistic. "I've been his mother-in-law for 3 years, and I still have no idea what he's prepared for today. It'll be better to keep your expectations low. That way, you won't be disappointed." The Cassidy and Haynes families' moods soured. They had a feeling that Stephen had fooled them. Meanwhile, Stephen had changed into a classy suit. He hadn't stopped smiling since he got here. Rosalind couldn't help but tease him. "Your smile is enough to light up the entire room." Dennis pointed to a military uniform on a hanger. "He'll be even more dazzling when he wears this." This was not an ordinary military uniform. It was a uniform with 6 stars on the shoulder that had been designed specifically for the commander. When the wedding reached the halfway point, Stephen would change into this uniform and reveal his identity as the commander. Of course, he also had a higher identity, which was the Grand Palace Master, an existence that was beyond the reach of ordinary people with half of the world's wealth in his possession. The regular people wouldn't have heard of the palace before. Being the commander-in-chief would be enough to shock the entire audience. "According to the wedding program, we'll remind you to change into the uniform halfway through," Rosalind said. "Today, we'll show the world that you're not a nobody. You're the commander-in-chief with the destiny of a country." Kim had changed into a beautiful silk dress with an embroidered train. The makeup artist had just finished applying the finishing touches to her makeup. She looked like a woman who had stepped out of a painting. This was the first time the Cassidy and Haynes families had seen her so dressed up. Helen was awestruck. "Kim's beautiful. Letting her marry someone like Stephen is such a waste." "Stephen's not worthy of her," Natalie said. "Look at his friends on the other side. What kind of people are they? Besides David, who's from a wealthy family in the district, the other people are simply not up to par." Kyle nodded in agreement. "Fortunately, we stopped Stephen's mother from coming. We would have been even more embarrassed if she showed up." "The wedding's already started, but if Stephen fails to meet our expectations, I won't hesitate to stop in the middle," Helen declared. Just as the Cassidy and Haynes families were filled with righteous indignation, a wave of restless voices sounded outside the venue. Everyone stuck their heads out to see what was going on. Several luxury cars were parked at the entrance. The cheapest was worth over $1 million. The Rolls-Royce Phantom at the center was particularly conspicuous. A Lincoln was right behind it. Rebecca's eyes widened.
Which family is that?
Are they friends of our family?
Helen asked. She thought it over, but the Cassidy family didn't have any connections like these. She glanced at Gordon and Mavis, who looked at each other awkwardly. Both of them shook their heads.
They're not our guests.
If they weren't the Cassidy family's or the Haynes family's guests, then that left either Kim or Stephen. They immediately ruled out Stephen. He'd never been that capable. While everyone was guessing, the door to the luxury cars opened. A few sharp-eyed guests recognized the new arrivals in the lead. It's the head of the Moran family in New York City, Tremaine Moran. Behind him is the head of the Pierce family. Tremaine's aura filled the venue the moment he stepped inside. He was escorted by the other royal family leaders. One by one, they went up to Kim and Stephen and congratulated them. The Cassidy and Haynes families looked at each other, feeling like their brains were short-circuited. Neither of them came close to the royal families in New York City. All of the royal families, with the exception of one, were here to attend the wedding. What was going on? They were especially surprised by Tremaine's arrival. He'd turned 100 this year, but he'd come to the venue in person. Helen, Gordon, and Mavis sharpened their minds, trying to make sense of the shocking scene. But they couldn't figure it out. Neither the Cassidy nor Haynes families had the qualifications to be worthy of Tremaine's presence at the wedding. Kim was successful, but not enough to have connections like these. The only possibility was Stephen. Helen, Gordon, and Mavis glanced at him. Just then, another wave of new arrivals entered the venue. It was the Sierra family. Stephanie and Angelo were escorted into the venue by the rest of the Sierra family. They went straight to Kim and Stephen and congratulated them on their wedding. Angelo had been removed from his position as the head of the family, but he was Stephen's grandfather, so that put him on equal footing with Stephanie. He'd been looking forward to attending his grandson's wedding and seeing his daughter again. Their previous reunion had been too short. Angelo scanned the venue, but he didn't see any sign of Victoria. "Stephanie, do you see your Aunt Victoria anywhere?" Helen recalled that the Sierra family was a royal family in New York City. She suddenly felt uneasy.
"Mr. Angelo, is Victoria Sierra your daughter?"
Angelo did not look pleased. "Is there a problem?" Kim and Stephen were about to answer, but a member of the Sierra family reported to Angelo. Someone from the bride's family said the groom's mother was of low status, so she wasn't allowed to attend the wedding. "What? Who said that?" Angelo's angry gaze swept over Helen, Gordon, Mavis, and the others. "Who do you think you are to stop my daughter from attending her son's wedding?" Helen, Gordon, and Mavis looked at each other in embarrassment. They hadn't expected Victoria to be a member of a royal family. If she was Angelo's daughter, then that would make Stephen... They instantly understood. It turned out that this was the surprise that Stephen had wanted to give them. Angelo's grandson certainly had a talent for playing games with them. The Sierra family was a height that the Cassidy and Haynes families would never be able to reach. With Stephen's identity as Angelo's grandson, he'd elevated their status to the same level as a royal family. However, they couldn't have possibly imagined that this wasn't the surprise that Stephen had planned for them. Helen faced the Cassidy and Haynes families in a fluster.
"Why are you all just standing there? Bring Stephen's mother here. Wait, never mind. I'll go get her."
With that, Helen hurried to find Victoria. Gordon and Mavis rushed after her. Victoria didn't protest after hearing the Sierra family was here to attend the wedding. She followed Helen and the others to the venue. Helen lowered her seniority and linked arms with Victoria.
"I had no idea you were from a royal family. You should have told us sooner." "It's never too late to learn something new,"
Mavis said, holding Victoria's other arm. The Cassidy and Haynes families were brimming with enthusiasm as they tried to flatter Victoria. Natalie patted Stephen's shoulder. "You could have fooled me. I never would have expected this kind of surprise. You and Kim are a match made in heaven. I was blind all these years and never realized your identity." Kyle nodded profusely. I already told you that Stephen wasn't a regular person. He was just keeping a low profile. None of you believed me. Stephen didn't say anything. It was ironic because Natalie and Kyle were among the ones who'd tried to stop his remarriage with Kim the most. Now that they knew he was Angelo's grandson, their attitude had shifted 80 degrees. Kim was embarrassed by the blatant lack of shame. But the Cassidy and Haynes families didn't care. They agreed with Kyle. All of the royal family leaders from New York City were here to congratulate Kim and Stephen. It must have been because his identity is Angelo's grandson. Stephen found it amusing that this was all it took to satisfy them. By his standards, this was far from being a real surprise. Mom, Dad, this isn't the surprise I prepared for you. The real surprise will be coming later. Natalie and Kyle's faces lit up. You have more surprises for us? Helen, Gordon, and Mavis were filled with anticipation. Stephen being Angelo's grandson was enough to shock them, but he didn't consider it a real surprise. Could it be that he had another identity of a higher status? If that were really the case, then the Cassidy and Haynes family statuses would rise to an entirely new level. Natalie put her hands on her hips and gave the Cassidy and Haynes families an accusatory look. I've been very supportive of Kim and Stephen's relationship since the beginning. But what about you guys? None of you had any expectations of Stephen. Now that you know the truth, do you still have the courage to say that he's not worthy of our Kim? When Stephen first married into the Cassidy family, everyone around them called him a good-for-nothing freeloader. He'd made things harder for their family, and they'd suffered quite a bit. Today, Natalie could finally retaliate. Helen quickly nodded. We called you blind in the past, but your eyesight is 20/20. Your son-in-law is impressive. Ever since the beginning, I thought that Stephen had great potential, Mavis echoed. It turns out he's from a royal family. If anyone dares to criticize Stephen again, I won't let it go, Gordon declared. The heads of the Cassidy and Haynes families had spoken, so the rest followed suit and began flattering Stephen. It was a stark contrast to their attitude from minutes before. Kim wasn't all that thrilled even though her family had finally accepted Stephen. They only acknowledged him because of his identity as a member of the Sierra family. They weren't seeing him for who he really was. I know what you're thinking, Stephen whispered. This isn't the surprise I've prepared for today. Kim brightened, and her anticipation returned. At that moment, another group of people walked in. It was the leader of the Hawthorne Society, Atticus Hawthorne. He was with the 4 guardians and the 8 deities. The Cassidy and Haynes families sucked in a breath. Not just anyone could come in contact with the Hawthorne Society. Atticus congratulated Kim and Stephen on their wedding as everyone stared. The 4 guardians and 8 deities did the same. Stephen gave them a smile. Have a seat. The Cassidy and Haynes families were bewildered. Atticus was treating Stephen with immense respect, but he was acting as if it was only natural. Even if he was Angelo's grandson, shouldn't he still need to be polite to the leader of the Hawthorne Society? What other identity could Stephen possibly have? While they entered another round of guessing, another guest arrived. It was the head of the Adams family branch in Asheville, Mateo Adams. Their status was superior to Hawthorne Society and the 51 royal families in New York City combined. Tremaine was an elder who was 100 years of age, but he had to stand up and greet Mateo, who was much younger than him. Atticus didn't want to fall behind and followed suit. This was a world where the weak had to bow to the strong. Helen was in disbelief. Why is Mr. Tremaine being so respectful to Mr. Mateo? One of the guests heard her question and showed off their knowledge. The Adams family's branch in Asheville is a royal family. The main branch based in Washington, D.C. is ranked above them because they're a Beaumont family who's been around for 1,000 years. Mr. Mateo's group may be a royal family, but they're of much higher status than regular royal families because of their affiliation to the Adams family. Helen, Gordon, and Mavis broke out in a cold sweat. They'd originally thought that the Hawthorne Society and the 51 royal families of New York City were the highest-ranking people here. But Mateo's family outranked all of them. They stared blankly at the unbelievable scene before them. They didn't have the words. This surprise was mind-blowing. Natalie was so overjoyed that she wanted to hug Stephen.
Stephen, your surprise is wonderful. As your mother-in-law, I officially announce that you have a final say in our family affairs.
Kim had a net worth of $100 billion, but it was insignificant in the face of Mateo's family. Helen joined in.
I've decided to let Stephen make the decision regarding all of our Cassidy family's affairs, no matter how minor. He'll also be in charge of our properties.
I give Stephen the permission to take charge of our Haynes family's matters, Gordon said. They weren't offering out of generosity, and neither of them bothered to hide their shrewdness. It was because Stephen had reached the point where even a branch of the Addams family had to treat him with respect. He was capable of elevating their family status to an unimaginable peak. Victoria was wary of Mateo's family. Their presence at the wedding couldn't be good. There was a high possibility that the Addams family's main branch had sent them here. Little did she know that Mateo's family had attended the wedding on their own accord. It had nothing to do with the main branch. Stephen was amused by Helen, Gordon, and Mavis's enthusiasm.
This isn't the surprise I've prepared.
Helen was stunned.
It's not?
It wasn't an exaggeration to say that Mateo's arrival was an honor and that they were gracing them with their presence. If this isn't your surprise, then what is it? Gordon asked, curiosity getting the better of him. Stephen was acting as if Mateo's family wasn't that big of a deal. Mavis glared at Gordon.
Stephen said this wasn't the surprise. Be patient and wait.
The wedding had begun with 50 royal families from New York City making their debut. Then, the remaining royal family, the Sierra family, revealed that Stephen was Angelo's grandson. Next, the leader of the Hawthorne Society appeared. Finally, the head of the Addams family's branch in Asheville arrived. Each subsequent arrival was more fearsome than the last, and they were all here to congratulate Stephen on his wedding. But with so many big shots present, Stephen was still saying that this wasn't the surprise he'd planned. Mavis was looking forward to the real surprise. Gordon quickly changed his words. You're right, I was being rude. After Mateo's appearance, the other guests soon arrived and filled in the empty seats. The wedding was officially underway. A short distance away from the heart of Washington, D.C., was a mansion that was owned by the Addams family. Johann was in the main hall, sitting at the head of the table. His bodyguards and subordinates were standing in rows behind him. Has Stephen's wedding begun? Yes, one of his bodyguards replied. It should have just started. Good, then it's time for us to leave. Oh, right. Is my wedding gift ready? It's in the truck. It's ready to be delivered to the wedding venue at any time. Johann nodded. He stood up and walked out the door. A row of luxury cars were parked outside. There were a total of 11 cars. The 5 cars in front and behind were Maseratis worth $10 million each. An extended vintage Lincoln was in the middle. At the rear was a truck. Johann went over to the truck and peered inside. He grinned when he saw the wedding gift that he'd prepared for Stephen. It would be the surprise of his life. Johann made his way to the Lincoln. His bodyguard opened the door for him and held his hand above his head to prevent him from bumping into the top of the car. Johann's phone rang just as he got into the passenger seat. You're in the district already, right? Terrence asked. Yeah, I got here the day before yesterday. I prepared for 2 whole days to get my wedding gift ready in time. Are you really planning to attend Stephen's wedding? Of course. How could I miss it? My gift will be unforgettable. All right, do what you have to do, but try not to kill anyone. It's better to get rid of him as soon as possible, but our family knows he's alive, so many people are paying attention to him. His death won't be in our favor, Terrence said. Don't worry, Dad. I know this is an important time for you. You're about to officially take over the family. I won't make a mistake. We can't kill him for the time being, but he's too full of himself. I'll make him tone it down a notch and show him exactly what we're capable of. Johann was confident, so Terrence didn't say anything else. Deal with him however you want. Just don't kill him. The seats were filled at the wedding venue. All the guests had arrived. On Kim's side, many friends in her circle and distant relatives of the Cassidy and Haynes families had rushed over of their own accord after hearing about her social status. On the other hand, Stephen's side had a luxurious lineup. There was no competition. Mateo's family from Asheville, the 51 royal families of New York City, and the Hawthorne Society were enough to crush the Cassidy and Haynes families. The best man, David, was from a wealthy family in Washington, D.C., so that was extra points to Stephen's side. Callan, the military base commanders, and the 4 gatekeepers sat behind them, looking casual. They kept their identities a secret. If word got out, panic would overrun the country and make the external forces nervous. Victoria sat in between Angelo and Stephanie. She was the happiest person there. Kim and Stephen were standing at opposite ends of a long aisle decorated with rose petals. Jasmine, the maid of honor, and the other bridesmaids, Rosalind, Julia, and Annika, fixed Kim's train. Kyle took Kim's hand in his. 23 confetti cannons had been set up by a group of handsome men in suits, leather shoes, and sunglasses. They were the elites of Tyrone Floyd's special forces. With the host's announcement, Kim took Kyle's arm and stepped onto the aisle, making her way to Stephen. The best man, David, and the groomsmen, Dennis, Zachary, and Jaden, were standing behind him. Tyrone was below the stage. He signaled with his hand, and his team of elites fired the confetti cannons. A shower of flowers, petals, and confetti rained down on Kim. The audience took out their phones to film the beautiful scene on stage. Kim smiled brightly at Stephen when she reached the other end of the aisle. "Stephen, I'll be leaving my daughter in your care," Kyle said solemnly. "Treat her well." "I will." Stephen got down on one knee and held out the bouquet. "I promise to love you in sickness and health, prosperity and decline, for the rest of our lives. I'll stand by you forever and always." Kim took the bouquet in her hands. "You're my dream come true, Stephen. I love you, and I'll cherish you for the rest of my days." Stephen stood up, and she jumped into his arms. The audience burst into thunderous applause. Stephen held Kim's hand and walked to the center of the stage under the host's instructions. As the wedding progressed, the Cassidy and Haynes families grew restless. "We're almost halfway through," Gordon said impatiently. "When is Stephen going to reveal his surprise?" "I don't know either," Helen replied. "Maybe he'll reveal it at the end," Mavis suggested. "The finale is the most important part of the wedding." "I think it's very likely," Helen agreed. Stephen noticed them discussing from the corner of his eye. He leaned closer to Kim and whispered, "I don't think your family can wait much longer. They're getting impatient." "Even I'm getting impatient," Kim teased. "When are you planning to surprise us?" "Soon," Stephen said with a smile. "It's coming up." He held her hand and toasted the guests before returning to the stage. The host stood between them with the microphone in hand. "It wasn't easy for Mr. Stephen and Miss Kim to stand here today. Mr. Stephen has many things he would like to say to the person he wants to protect the most. Let's listen to his confession to the woman he loves." There was another round of thunderous applause below the stage. Stephen took the microphone from the host and faced the audience. "Thank you all for coming." He turned to Kim and gazed into her eyes. "Kim, I'm sorry for making you wait this long. Thank you for accompanying me all these years and never giving up on me. You never told me, but I know that because of who I am, I made you suffer for much too long. Despite everything, you believed in me, and that's all I ever needed. Meeting you, marrying you, and becoming your husband is my greatest happiness." The audience fell silent. Many people were moved to tears, including Kim. "I want to make it up to you," Stephen continued. "The appearance of the 51 royal families in New York City, Hawthorne Society, the Addams family's branch in Asheville, and a member of the Sierra family was not the surprise I planned. The real surprise will be revealed soon. Wait for me. I'll show you who your husband really is." Kim nodded. "I'll wait for you." The guests were in an uproar as Stephen went backstage. The 4 great generals followed him. Angelo, Tremaine, Atticus, and Matteo had a vague guess as to what Stephen had prepared. They could already imagine the astonishment when he appeared in his military uniform. In the room backstage, Stephen, along with Dennis, Rosalind, Zachary, and Jaden, changed into military uniforms. 6 stars glimmered on Stephen's shoulder. Mr. Adams, we're ready. Callan, the military base commanders, and the 4 gatekeepers walked in, dressed in uniform. This was the real surprise that Stephen had planned. Since he would be revealing his identity as the commander-in-chief, he would do so with an extravagant lineup. Their group appearance at the wedding would make it a real wedding of the century. Dennis took the lead and saluted Stephen. The rest followed. From the moment they changed into their military uniforms, they were no longer regular citizens. They had become soldiers of the country. The Cassidy and Haynes families were waiting anxiously at their table. "It's been a while," Natalie said nervously. "What kind of surprise did he plan? Why is he taking so long?" In reality, Stephen had only left for less than 5 minutes, but it felt like 5 months to the Cassidy and Haynes families. After all, he'd told them that even Mateo Adams wasn't his surprise. They couldn't even begin to imagine what he'd prepared. "Let's wait and see. It's only been a few minutes." Helen appeared to be composed, but she was a bundle of nerves on the inside. Backstage, Stephen faced the 4 great generals, Callan, the military base commanders, and the 4 gatekeepers. "Is everyone ready?" He couldn't help but feel excited and nervous at the same time. How shocked would everyone be when they made their debut? Kim would finally know his true identity as the commander-in-chief. How would she react? He'd been waiting for this day to come for a very long time. "We're ready," Dennis replied. "All right, let's go." With Stephen in the lead, the rest of them neatly split into 2 teams and prepared to head back to the stage. While the 4 great generals, Callan, the military base commanders, and the 4 gatekeepers followed Stephen in a neat formation back to the stage, an uninvited guest arrived. The guests were waiting anxiously for Stephen to reappear, especially the Cassidy and Haynes families. All of a sudden, a commotion at the entrance drew their attention. A fleet of luxury cars worth more than 10 million arrived. Thousands of people appeared at the door and filed into the venue. Helen's eyes widened. "It's so grand. Is this Stephen's surprise?" Even the 51 royal families and Tremaine couldn't reach this level. The Cassidy and Haynes families' anticipation grew. As for the Sierra family, Tremaine and Atticus, they turned to the entrance in surprise. In the middle of the luxury cars, more than 10 people who appeared to be bodyguards stood in front of an extended Lincoln. The bodyguard next to the car door held his hand above the person inside as he stepped out. Victoria grew nervous when she saw Johann make his appearance. Did the Adams family send him here? "Who's that?" Gordon asked curiously. "He looks important. Is he Stephen's friend?" Tremaine and the others were stunned by Johann's aura. Thousands of elite bodyguards flanked his side, and they were not inferior to him in any way. Each of these bodyguards was on par with Erickson and could easily take down someone like Cedric. Although Cedric had suppressed New York City for more than 2 decades with his swordsmanship, none of the forces in the city had met the other members of the Adams family before, let alone Johann. The only 2 people present who knew Johann's identity were Victoria and the head of the Adams family's branch in Asheville, Mateo Adams. Mateo was just as surprised as everyone else to see Johann in person. He stood up and hurried over to greet him. "Mr. Johann, it's nice to see you." "Mateo, you're here too?" Johann said. He scanned the crowd. All eyes were on him. The crowd stared in confusion. Mateo's family was affiliated with the main branch, but even he had to treat this Mr. Johann with respect. Out of the guests present, Mateo held the highest status. Why was he being so polite to someone who was only in his 20s? Kyle was confident in his judgment of others. He easily deduced that Mr. Johann was more formidable than anyone else. He hurried out of his seat to greet him. "Hello, I'm the bride's father. May I ask if you're here to attend the wedding?" Johann flashed a charming smile. "Yes, I am. To be more precise, I'm here for the groom, Stephen." As Kyle had expected, the mysterious new arrival was Stephen's friend. "I've prepared 3 gifts for the groom. Each one is more special than the last. He'll be shocked when he sees them." "Mr. Johann, you came all the way here. How could we turn you away?" Kyle extended his hand in an inviting gesture. Please, come in. From Johan's attire, his imposing and charismatic demeanor, and his bodyguards, Kyle could guess that his 3 gifts must be valuable. Johan was surrounded by his bodyguards as he entered the venue. He walked straight to the stage and came face to face with Kim. Stephen's lucky to have found a beautiful wife like you. Thank you, Kim said politely. Johan looked around, somewhat confused. Where's the groom? He's preparing a surprise. Johan's smile widened and motioned for the host to pass the microphone to him. He shouted into the mic. Stephen, where are you? Backstage, Stephen and the others stopped in their tracks when they felt a surge of energy. They sensed a large group of unfamiliar auras in the venue. Rosalind closed her eyes and estimated their numbers. There's at least 1,000 of them, and they're all proficient in martial arts. Dennis, check on the situation, Stephen instructed. Dennis left the room and returned a few minutes later. I heard a few guests saying that a young man of unknown identity came in. Mateo greeted him and called him Mr. Johan. I believe they're referring to the successor of the Addams family. Johan. A cold glint flickered in Stephen's eyes. Wasn't he supposed to be in Maryland? Should we deal with Johan before revealing our identities? Dennis asked. No, today's a big day. It's not appropriate to shed blood. Johan most likely is here to make a scene, but we can't act rashly. Stephen fell silent, considering their next course of action. Let's change out of our uniforms. Why? Callan asked, confused. You've waited for this moment for so long. You wanted to reveal your identity as the commander-in-chief during your wedding with Miss Kim. I did, but the situation has changed. I don't want to expose my identity in front of Johan. It'll ruin my plans. The grudge between me and the Addams family is far from over. But what about Miss Kim? Callan pressed. It can't be helped, Stephen said. I'll wait for another opportunity to tell her that I'm the commander-in-chief. He could reveal his identity at any time, but he couldn't help but feel disappointed. Their wedding was a grand occasion, and revealing his identity on a day like this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It would never come again. Callan gave in. All right, if that's what you want, then we'll change out of our uniforms. On stage, Johan was growing impatient. He'd shouted 3 times into the microphone, but there was no response from Stephen. The audience wanted to tell him that Stephen was backstage, but his aggression made them hesitate. Kim noticed that there was something off about Johan. Stephen will be here soon. There's no need to yell. Well, if you say so. Johan ignored her and faced the crowd. Since Stephen's taking such a long time, why don't I introduce myself? I'm Johan Addams, a member of the Addams family in Washington, D.C. Johan thought that his name would shock the crowd, but the scene he'd imagined didn't come to pass. Aside from the 51 royal families, Hawthorne Society, and Mateo's family, the other guests didn't see a difference between Johan and David's family. They were both wealthy families from the district. Johan laughed when his announcement was met with bewildered silence. A majority of the guests hadn't heard of the Addams family's prestige. Stephen had been in this kind of environment for the past few years. No wonder he'd become so full of himself, and even challenged the Addams family. Mr. Johan, why are you laughing? Kyle asked in confusion. I'm laughing at everyone's ignorance. You haven't heard of the Addams family's achievements? Kyle frowned. Johan seemed to be looking down on them. Please watch your tone. Is it that big of a deal? Johan gave him a thoughtful nod. No, it's not that big of a deal. It makes sense that people at the bottom are ignorant of the world. It's not your fault. I'll enlighten you all today. He looked around the venue, and his gaze fell on Tremaine and the other royal families. 30 years ago, Cedric Addams suppressed the 51 families with his sword. They couldn't lift their heads for decades out of shame. He's right, Tremaine confirmed. I'm the head of the Moran family, but even I'm no match for Cedric. Helen, Gordon, and Mavis were stunned. It was unbelievable that someone had been able to force the royal families into submission. Johan went on. Cedric is among the lower ranks in the Addams family. Most of our members could have taken him down instantly. The crowd brimmed with excitement. It was already impressive that Cedric had the strength to suppress the royal families, but it turned out that he didn't have a high status. Wasn't the Addams family a little too powerful? Johann smiled. This was the reaction he was looking for. Let me put it this way. You should already know that above the noble families are the prospective royal families and the royal families. Did you think that was the top? He shook his head. No, there's a higher tier, a Beaumont family. An example is our Addams family in the district. We have a long history of 1,000 years, and we're ranked first in the country. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? The crowd exchanged glances. Johann's explanation was simple. The Addams family was ranked first, which meant that they were the strongest in the country. Helen suddenly made the connection. Stephen's surname was also Addams. Was he related to Johann? She'd never had a good impression of Stephen, but if he was a member of the Addams family... She wasn't sure if she wanted to finish that thought. Mr. Johann, you and Stephen have the same surname, Kyle said. Is he a member of your family? The Cassidy and Haynes families perked their ears, waiting expectantly for Johann's answer. If Stephen really was part of the Addams family, they would have a connection with the #1 family in the country. No one would ever look down on them again. Johann was smug as the crowd waited eagerly. They were a low-class group, hoping to use Stephen's supposed affiliation with the Addams family to soar to the top. Sorry to disappoint, Johann said, not feeling apologetic in the least. But Stephen isn't one of us. Or rather, he's not qualified to be a member of the Addams family. The Cassidy and Haynes family's expectations were crushed. Kyle was unwilling to give up. Stephen may not be a member of your family, but you came here today to attend his wedding shows how close you are. Are you friends? Friends, Johann repeated in contempt. Do you really think I'd be friends with someone like him? Kyle tensed, and he wasn't the only one. No matter how dense the guests were, it was at this moment that they realized that Johann was here to make a mess of the wedding. Stephen and his group returned to the venue after changing out of their uniforms. His annoyance flared when he saw Johann standing on the stage. Johann, who gave you the courage to come to the district and appear at my wedding? Johann paused in the middle of his tirade and slowly turned around with a grin on his face. He met Stephen's angry gaze. It had been 6 long years since they'd last seen each other, and it was also the first time they'd ever looked each other in the eye like this. Back when Stephen was with the Addams family, no one had thought highly of him. Needless to say, Johann was no exception. He'd never bothered to make eye contact with Stephen. The atmosphere became tense as the audience held their breaths. The venue was so quiet that they could almost hear a pin drop. Stephen and Johann stared at each other without a word for a full minute. It was Johann's subordinate, Hector Addams, who broke the silence. How dare you look at Mr. Johann like that? He commanded the bodyguards to attack. Thousands of Johann's followers moved at the same time. In the Addams family, Johann's status was only second to the head of the family, Terence. Back home, no one, including outsiders, would ever look at Johann with such a condescending gaze, because even the slightest provocation could result in their end. Stop, Johann said. Hector and the bodyguards halted. It's been 6 years, but you haven't changed, Stephen. The life you're leading and the people around you don't come close to the Addams family. I'm very disappointed in you. Johann was not only insulting Stephen, but everyone present. He didn't care. He had the confidence to do so. The #1 family in the country had that kind of influence. Stephen sneered, matching Johann's disdain. You're the one who hasn't changed. You're Laurel's son, and I've been wondering if you were as great as they said you were. But after seeing you again after 6 years, I can't see any improvements from you. It seems the 2 highest-ranked families in the country are only average. Stephen was no longer the person he used to be. After a grueling 6 years, he'd reached the top through his own efforts and achieved an unprecedented position. Johann was stagnant, and his current level had only been achieved through the Addams family's resources. In Stephen's eyes, Johann was no different from a child throwing a tantrum. He may have been more impressed if Terrence or the previous head of the Addams family, Castile, came in person. Johann laughed. Erickson did tell me that you've become more conceited. I didn't believe him, but now that I'm seeing it with my own eyes, it's truly unbelievable. If Stephen had spent the past 6 years in this kind of environment, then it was natural for him to become full of himself. These low-class guests were ignorant and had narrow horizons. Some of them had never even heard of the Addams family before. After spending some time with them, Stephen's standards had lowered, and he thought of himself as invincible. "Stephen, what right do you have to look down on me?" Johann asked. "If you really want to, you should show me your strength first. If you don't have the ability, then keep your mouth shut if you know what's good for you." "That's what I should be saying to you," Stephen shot back. "You're not worthy of witnessing my strength." David quickly pulled Stephen back. "Are you crazy? You're talking to the successor of the Addams family. I know you used to be one of them, but you don't know much about their family. You can't provoke him like this." Victoria joined them on stage. "David's right. The Addams family has a deep foundation. Not just anyone can go against them." Johann was even more proud when David and Victoria spoke up. "Did you hear that, Stephen? Did you forget about the time you stayed with us? Even they know you shouldn't provoke us so easily. You have no self-awareness. After succeeding a little, you think you're invincible. I suggest you read more often during your free time and step out of the house to meet new people once in a while. That's the only way you'll learn." Each sentence dripped with sarcasm. Stephen clenched his feet. If it were anyone else, they would have already tried to swing a punch at Johann. Victoria stepped in front of him. "Stephen, calm down. He's someone we can't afford to offend." She was worried that a fight would break out. It wasn't easy for her to reunite with Stephen, and they were living a good life together. She didn't want anything to happen to him. She was prepared to plead with Johann to let Stephen go. Johann's gaze shifted. "Are you Victoria, Sierra?" She was all the Addams family talked about as of late, but he'd never seen her before. She was imprisoned when Johann was born. Victoria nodded. "That's me." Johann gave her an unimpressed look. "To be honest, your appearance isn't that great. I don't understand how someone like you managed to hook up with my father back then. He's handsome and prestigious. Why would he fancy you?" Before Victoria could say anything, he continued. "The only possibility is that you clung to him and eventually got what you wanted. I suppose that says a lot about what kind of person you are." Stephen fixed Johann with a murderous glare. Johann felt the shift in temperature. It chilled him to the bone. And it wasn't just him. Everyone present felt the same thing. This was the manifestation of a martial artist's aura at Stephen's level. An intense fluctuation in emotion could change the surrounding temperature. The chill in the air was evidence of Stephen's anger. Johann had humiliated Victoria right in front of him. He couldn't let this go. Johann tried to hide a shiver. "What's wrong? Are you angry?" "But I didn't say anything wrong. Back then, my father had been acknowledged as the successor of the Addams family. He could have any woman he wanted in the world. Someone with your mother's status couldn't marry into our family. But she refused to give up, so she kept pestering my father. In the end, she didn't succeed in marrying him. But she did give birth to you, a child with the Addams family's blood." Despite David and Victoria's protests, Stephen walked past them and made his way to Johann. "You're a dead man walking. Did you know that?" A chilling aura rolled off him in waves. The four great generals knew what was about to happen. With Stephen's current emotional state, the battlefield would be littered with corpses. All enemies in sight would die here. Rosalind ran up to Stephen and tried to dissuade him. "Mr. Addams, this is your long-awaited wedding with Miss Kim." Dennis hurried over and whispered, "Remember what you said. You shouldn't shed blood on a big day like today." Stephen stopped, but he didn't say anything. His gaze never left Johann. A tense minute passed, and his aura gradually disappeared. They were right. He'd been preparing and waiting for this day for a long time. Today was his wedding with Kim. He couldn't lose control and ruin it. Johann grinned when Stephen unclenched his fists. What's the matter? Don't want to kill me anymore? This'll be your only chance. Why not take it? Just like how Stephen had said that Johann hadn't changed, he'd come to the same conclusion. The current Stephen was no different from the person he was 6 years ago. Becoming the owner of the Wyvern Group and leading the 51 royal families in New York City were achievements that were only possible because he had Terrence's blood flowing within him. Stephen would be nothing without his ties to the Addams family. For example, his display of anger just now. He'd nearly lost it in public because of a few provocative words. That kind of person would never be able to achieve great things. After listening to their arguments for this long, the Cassidy and Haynes families had no idea of what was going on. Stephen really was a member of the Addams family, but compared to Johann, the successor, he was an illegitimate child. But that fact didn't dampen their mood. It had the opposite effect. Even if Stephen was an illegitimate child and he wasn't welcomed in the Addams family, the same wouldn't hold true outside. Whether it was in Los Angeles, Santa Ana, or New York City, if Stephen revealed his affiliation with the Addams family, any upper-class family would treat him with respect. Having the name of the #1 family in the country at their disposal was useful in every circumstance.
I never would have imagined this to be the surprise that Stephen planned for us. He was a member of the Addams family all this time, Helen remarked.
I knew it, Natalie said.
That's why Stephen said that Mr. Mateo showing up wasn't his surprise for us. This is his real surprise. Mom, see that? Stephen didn't go back on his word. He didn't let us down. He's from the Addams family.
Johann looked over. The Cassidy and Haynes families seemed excited, as if they themselves were members of the Addams family. Wait, who told you that he was one of us? They froze. Mr. Johann, weren't you implying that Stephen's your half-brother? Half-brother? Johann laughed. He's not qualified to be my brother. The threshold to become a member is higher than you can imagine. Even Victoria, someone from a royal family, didn't have the qualifications to marry my father. You're just a bunch of low-class families thinking you're worth something. Not just anyone can join us. The Cassidy and Haynes family smiles faded.
Even if you don't like your half-brother, he still has your father's blood in him, Natalie argued. How is he not qualified? Besides, we all heard you say that he stayed with the Addams family for many years. Why can't he do the same thing now?
The rest of the family agreed with her. They looked at Johann in anticipation. Johann was the successor, so his words held weight. If they could get him to agree, then Stephen could go back to being part of the Addams family. To their dismay, he ignored them. Helen, Gordon, and Mavis exchanged glances and read each other's thoughts.
Mr. Johann, you've seen Stephen's achievements with your own eyes. The Addams family's branch in Asheville, Hawthorne Society, and the 51 royal families came to congratulate him. This is enough to prove his capabilities and his connections.
Gordon agreed.
We can't match up to the Addams family, but if you grant Stephen permission to join the family again, then we'll become your subordinates.
This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to ride the Addams family's coattails. The Cassidy and Haynes families could not let this go. Helen, Gordon, and Mavis were resolved to get on their knees if need be. Johann was not impressed. I don't need subordinates like you. You're far below a royal family. One of our lowest-ranking members was able to suppress them. What can you even contribute? His blunt refusal left Helen, Gordon, and Mavis speechless. But not a single word was a lie. To Johann, the Cassidy and Haynes families were equivalent to insects. Johann snickered when no one answered him. Of course, it's not impossible for Stephen to join us again. I'll make it happen if he can satisfy at least one of my 2 requests. Helen's eyes flickered with hope.
Please tell us what they are. No matter what it is, we'll agree to them on Stephen's behalf.
Whether you agree or not is not the same thing as fulfilling my requests. Johann cast a sidelong glance at Stephen. My first request is for Stephen to kneel in front of me for 7 full days. He'll have to broadcast it live. That will show me how sincere he is. Helen, Gordon, and Mavis leaned in to discuss.
It's not that hard. Stephen just needs to get on his knees for 7 days. Minor suffering like this is nothing.
It's worth it if he can return to the Addams family.
But Stephen is stubborn. He might not agree. The three of them concluded that they would hold off on making a decision until they heard Johan's second request. It might be worth it, but kneeling for 7 days was a huge test of one's physical stamina and perseverance. They were worried that Stephen might not be able to hold on. "This is my second request," Johan said with a smile. "It's easier than the first. As long as Stephen's achievements are noteworthy, then the Addams family will acknowledge him. It won't be a problem to let him return. Our family welcomes all competent candidates. His identity as an illegitimate son is not an issue." Helen, Gordon, and Mavis looked at each other. It wouldn't be easy to get the Addams family to acknowledge Stephen. They were ranked first in the country. Not just anyone could get their approval. Even if Stephen restored his identity as the owner of Felicity Corporation, it would still be far from enough. Therefore, they automatically ruled out Johan's second request. The first request was much easier to fulfill, and it was the only way for Stephen to be accepted into the family again. Many members of the Cassidy and Haynes families were envious of Stephen and hoped that the opportunity would be given to them. This time around, Helen, Gordon, and Mavis didn't need to discuss. They'd already made a unanimous decision through eye contact. They would go with the first request and broadcast the scene to the public. As Johan's half-brother, it would be somewhat humiliating for Stephen to kneel in front of him, but it would be worth it. This was the Addams family they were talking about. Whoever became one of them would achieve a superior existence. One low-ranking member was enough to suppress the royal families in New York City for more than 2 decades. That alone was proof of the Addams family's strength.
Mr. Johan, does Stephen only need to fulfill one of your 2 requests?
Helen asked. Johan nodded. Choose one of the 2. Then, it will depend on Stephen. This was an important matter, so Helen asked again.
I trust that you'll keep your promise?
Johan gave her a cold look. Are you questioning me? I'm the successor of the Addams family. If that doesn't mean anything to you, do you want my father to be our witness?
That's not necessary,
Helen said quickly. Johan's confident answer was convincing enough. As the successor, he wouldn't go back on his word. The chance to climb up the ranks was right in front of Stephen. All he had to do was kneel. He would be a fool to refuse.